CropLife magazine recently held its State of the Industry webinar and featured Dr. Dave Downey, Professor Emeritus and President of the Center for Agricultural Business at Purdue University. Dave discussed the challenges that retailers face as growers evolve into larger and more sophisticated entities that must be served in new and unique ways. As a follow-up, we asked Dave to provide some additional insight for retailers who have made the decision to take this challenge head-on. Clearly, he says, the evolution of large commercial growers has implications for how retailers organize their businesses and develop the services and products their customers need.
A lot of this is built around the idea that the buyer is becoming more industrialized in how they think and how they act. And by industrialized, I mean they're very much more focused on the business implications of the decisions they make than they are purely the agronomic decisions they make. Rest assured, the business is about agronomics. The business is about fertilizer, crop protection, and genetics. But those simply become inputs to an industrialized business decision. And so they're scrutinized and utilized in perhaps a different way than we've traditionally done. And so our ability to demonstrate the financial implications, the logistics implications, the labor-saving implications, the way that makes the farmer's business works better, the way it helps them manage their risk, become elements that traditionally we haven't focused on very much because we focus mostly upon the technical aspects of the agronomy. And I don't want to be misunderstood here. The agronomy is going to continue to be terribly critical and important to those processes. But we must learn to take on the business implications of those decisions and be able to communicate those effectively to the industrial buyer or the farmer who's using spreadsheets, who's using information, who's thinking about logistics, who's thinking about labor costs, who's thinking about risk management more than we ever have before. Those same things are not only important to the very large producer, they're also increasingly important to the mid-sized producer as well, even though they may not take on nearly as much of a formal aspect as they do with the larger producers. The second thing is organizing the ag retail business in such a way that we can operate ourselves more efficiently in that industrialized climate. By that I mean that increasingly as the size of the retail operation grows and we have more compartments, more departments, more different parts of the business, they have to work together in a very concise way as opposed to operating like silos. In a traditional format, that means that the salesperson must interact more with the delivery personnel and the applicators. But of course it's more than that because it's now credit people, it is marketing people, it is sales people, it is application people, it might be just delivery personnel, it may be plant personnel. Frankly, the ag retail business that's highly successful and is becoming larger is much more complicated, and that means that the management of the retail system must be able to take on the aspects of managing teams of people and making sure that each person is doing their job, interacting with other people in their business so that to the customer it's a seamless process. What that often means, it means that we're moving more toward what I call account management, where if you do have the situation where 90% of the business or 80% is with half a dozen customers, then we must manage those accounts in a much more professional manner. One of the ways that people are experimenting with and having some success is thinking of this as an account manager where one person, perhaps the salesperson, perhaps the agronomist, but some person that's designated as the key point so that everything the farmer wants to do is kind of focused through that person. Now, that doesn't mean that person does everything, and it doesn't mean that no one else has contact with the customer. But it does mean that we coordinate those so that everybody inside the ag retail business knows what kinds of things are going on with that customer so that an applicator or an agronomist doesn't get blindsided by something that happened 2 days ago with that particular customer. And so that communication internally is becoming far more complex and far more complicated. And so it is no longer one person selling one person. Add to that at the farmer's business, they often have multiple people we have to contact and communicate with. They've got employees. They have their own agronomists in some cases. Sometimes they have their own bookkeepers or their own person that's responsible for paying the bills. And so we have to have this multiple-faceted relationship, which gets a lot more complicated. Third is that since many of our larger customers have multiple farm locations where they're farming sometimes 10, 15, 20 or more miles separating their different operations, they sometimes must be serviced out of different locations even if they're only dealing with a single ag retailer. And that means it's more than communication within the plant. It's communication effectively with different locations that the ag retailer may have, all working together to satisfy that farmer. And from the farmer's perspective, it's got to be seamless. It's got to be clear that you know what's going on at every one of those locations that the farmer farms, and everything is totally under control. So that becomes another aspect of dealing with these larger customers. The fourth issue is that larger customers expect what is done for them will be tailor-made for them. Now, we've always done that with regard to the agronomy, of course, because every field is different, and we've gotten very skilled at precision farming and precision agriculture. We are now keeping much better records on every field and all those kinds of things. But this means it's tailored to them in the way they want to do business. This implies that you must understand the farmer's logistical needs. We must understand what kind of transportation issues are important to them. We got to understand how they like to schedule things. We have to understand how they like to pay their bills. What kind of communication occurs that will help them run their business more efficiently and more effectively. So we must tailor the way we do business, not just tailor the agronomy. We must tailor the way we do business with the individual needs of individual customers.